Hi, my name is Lietard, and I'm giving a report on the impact of surveillance technology on society. I'd like to start off by discussing a brief history of surveillance technology. It was originally formulated by a man named Jeremy Bentham in the late 1700s, as it applies today, at least. Bentham was an English philosopher and social theorist, and he came up with the idea of a prison that was called a panopticon. It was a circular structure with cells occupying the circle and an observation tower positioned in the center so that a guard could watch all prisoners potentially at any time, but the prisoners could never tell if the guard was being watched. The problem with this, while it does enforce a strict rule, is that it just applies it through negative reinforcement and doesn't offer any true incentive for the prisoners to improve their behavior. The only reason that they change their behavior patterns is because of the potential that they're being constantly observed and the possible repercussions of their actions. While it does matter how our actions have repercussions, and that does influence the way we act, it's not because of the potential punishments, but because of the potential misfortunes of others that we should act this way. The flaw of the dystopian society, which is kind of set up by Bentham in his idea of the panopticon, is described very thoroughly in George Orwell's 1984, in which society has reached such a totalitarian state that its citizens are under constant surveillance by a government. The novel became so popular that it actually coined the phrase Big Brother as an identity for the government through its highly advanced surveillance technology. Other examples of surveillance technology as recurring motives in science fiction are Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation, Minority Report, and Alan Moore's V for Vendetta. Now, the real question of this matter is, why should any of this affect us? Well, the simple fact is that we live in a society which is strongly reflected by these art forms, such as those films and the novels. Video surveillance is so commonplace in our society that we are living in something very much like a global panopticon. We have to consider if we are still influenced by the incentive of acting right because of a duty, a calling to a higher cause, or because of the potential negative repercussions. This could have very damaging effects on us as a society at the very base level of our morals. And we also need to consider the power that is associated with this technology, since it can very easily fall into corrupt hands. If this technology should fall into what we would consider to be the wrong hands, then we would be facing something very much like the dystopians that we see in science fiction frequently. While we may be unable to definitively say whether surveillance technology is more beneficial than damaging to society, it is very important that we consider the damages before we boast about the benefits.